Greetings. The kings have already left, gone back to their own countries, and now Anne has returned to the crib cave. So, subtext, the return of Anne. After the departure of the kings, the Holy Family went over into the other cave, and I saw the crib cave quite empty, the ass alone still standing there. Everything, even the hearth, had been cleared away. I saw Mary peaceful and happy in her new abode, which had been arranged somewhat comfortably. Her couch was near the wall, and by her rested the child Jesus in an oval basket made of broad strips of bark. The upper end of the basket, where the head of the infant Jesus lay, was arched over with a cover. The basket itself stood on a woven partition before which Mary sometimes sat, with the child beside her. Joseph had a separate space at a little distance. Above the movable partition there projected from the wall a pole to which a lamp was suspended. I saw Joseph bringing in a pitcher of water and something in a dish. But he did not go any more to Bethlehem for necessaries. The shepherds brought him all that he needed. And now I saw Zechariah coming for the first time from Hebron to visit the Holy Family. He wept for joy as he held the child in his arms and recited, with some little changes, the canticle of thanksgiving that he had uttered at John's circumcision. He spent the following day with Joseph and then took his departure. Many persons going up to Bethlehem for the Sabbath called also at the crib cave, but when they no longer found Mary there, they went on to the city. Anne now came back to the Mother of God. She had been 8 days with her youngest sister, who had married into the tribe of Benjamin. She lived about 3 hours' distance from Bethlehem and had several sons who later became disciples of Jesus. Among them was the bridegroom of Cana. Anne's eldest daughter was with her. She was taller than Anne and looked almost as old. Anne's second husband also was with her. He was older and taller than Joachim, was named Eliud, and was engaged at the temple, where he had something to do with the cattle intended for sacrifice. Anne had a daughter by this marriage, and she too was called Mary. At the time of Christ's birth, the child may have been from 6 to 8 years old. By her third husband, Anne had a son who was known as the brother of Christ. There is a mystery connected with Anne's repeated marriages. She entered into them in obedience to the divine command. The grace by which she had become fruitful with Mary had not yet been exhausted. It was as if a blessing had to be consumed. Mary told Anne all about the kings, and she was very much touched at God's bringing those men so far to adore the child. She was filled with emotion on seeing their gifts, upon which she looked as expressions of their adoration. She helped to arrange and pack them, and she also gave many of them away. Anne's maid was still with Mary. When in the crib cave, she stayed in the little cellar-like cave to the left, and now she slept under a shed that Joseph had put up for her just in front of their present abode. Anne and her daughters slept in the crib cave. I saw that Mary let Anne take care of the child Jesus, a favor she had not granted to anyone else. I saw something that very much affected me. The hair of the infant Jesus was yellow and crisp, ended in very fine rays of light which glistened and sparkled through one another. I think they curled the child's hair, for they twisted it over the little head when they washed it. Then they put a little cloak around him. I always saw Mary, Joseph, and Anne full of devout emotion for the child Jesus, but their expression of it was quite unaffected and simple, as is always the case among holy chosen souls. The child displayed a love in turning toward its mother, such as by no means usual in young children, and was so happy when she was nursing the child, Mary always laid it in her arms. The king's gifts were now hidden in the cave in which Mary had taken up her abode. They were in a wicker chest, placed in a recess of the wall and perfectly concealed from sight. Anne's husband with her daughters and maids soon returned home, taking with them many of the royal gifts. Anne was now alone with Mary and Joseph, and she remained until Eliud and the maid came back. I saw her and Mary weaving or embroidering covers. She slept in the cave with Mary, but separate. There were again in Bethlehem soldiers seeking in many houses after the king's son newly born. They especially importuned with their questions a noble Jewish lady who was in childbed, but they went no more to the crib cave. It was now reported that only a poor Jewish family had been there, but of them nothing more could be learned. Two of the old shepherds went to Joseph, two of those that had first gone to the crib, and warned him of what was going on in Bethlehem. Then I saw Joseph, Mary, and Anne with the child Jesus making their way from the cave to the tomb under the large cedar tree beneath which I had heard the kings singing one evening. It was distant from the cave about 7.5 minutes. The tree stood upon a hill at the foot of which was an obliquely lying door opening into a passage that led to a perpendicular door which closed the passage to the tomb. The shepherds often stayed in the forepart of it. In front of the tomb was a spring. The tomb cave itself was not square, but rather rounded in form. At the upper end, which was somewhat broader, something like a scalloped stone coffin stood on heavy supports upon a foundation of stone. One could see between it and the coffin. The interior of the cave was of soft white stone. I saw the Holy Family entering it by night with a covered light. In the cave that they had vacated, nothing now was to be seen which could attract notice. The beds had been rolled up and taken away, as well as all their household effects. It looked like an abandoned dwelling place. Anne carried the child in her arms, Joseph and Mary at her side, while the shepherds led the way as guides. And now I had a vision, but I do not know whether it was seen by the Holy Family or not. I saw around the child Jesus in the arms of Anne a glory made up of 7 angelic figures entwined together and leaning one upon the other. They were besides many other figures in this aureola, and on either side of Anne, of Joseph, and of Mary, I saw figures of light supported by them, held up as it were under the arms. Passing through the first entrance, they shut it and went on into the interior of the tomb cave. A couple of days before Anne's return home, I saw some shepherds entering the tomb cave and speaking to Mary. They told her that government officials were coming to seek her child. Joseph hurried off with the child, Jesus wrapped in his mantle, and I saw Mary for half a day perhaps, sitting in the cave very anxious and without the child. When Eliud, with Anne's maid, came again from Nazareth to take Anne home, I saw a very beautiful ceremony celebrated in the crib cave. Joseph had taken advantage of Mary's withdrawal to the tomb cave, and with the help of the shepherds had adorned the whole interior of the crib cave. It was festooned with flower garlands, both walls and roof, and in the center stood a table. All the beautiful carpets and stuffs of the kings that had not yet been removed were spread over the floor and hung in festoons from the walls. A cover was spread on the table, and on it was placed a pyramid of flowers and foliage that reached to the opening in the roof. On top of that pyramid hovered a dove. The whole cave was full of light and splendor. The child Jesus, in his little basket cradle, was placed upon a stool on the table. He sat upright as he had done on the lap of his mother at the adoration of the kings. Joseph and Mary were standing on either side of him. They were adorned with wreaths, and they drank something out of a glass. I saw choirs of angels in the cave. All were very happy and full of emotion. It was the anniversary of Joseph and Mary's espousals. When the celebration was over, I saw Anne and Eliud going away and taking with them on 2 asses what still remained of the king's gifts. The Holy Family immediately set about preparing their own departure. Their household effects had steadily diminished. The portable partitions and other pieces of furniture made by Joseph were now bestowed upon the shepherds, who removed them at once. I saw the Blessed Virgin going twice by night to the crib cave with the child Jesus, and laying it on a carpet on the spot upon which it was born. Then she knelt down at its side and prayed. I saw the whole cave filled with light, as at the moment of the birth. It was now entirely cleared out, for Anne, on reaching home, had dispatched 2 of her servants to get whatever the Holy Family would not need on their journey. I saw them returning with the 2 asses on which they rode laden with goods. The cave to which the Holy Family had removed, as well as the crib cave, were now quite empty. They had also been swept out, for Joseph wanted to leave everything perfectly clean. On the night preceding their departure for the temple, I saw Mary and Joseph taking formal leave of the crib cave. They spread the deep red cover of the king's first over that spot upon which the child Jesus was born, laid the child on it, and kneeling beside it, prayed. Then they laid the child in the crib and again prayed beside it. And lastly, on the place where it had been circumcised, where too they knelt in prayer. Joseph had caused the young she-ass to be pawned among his relatives, for he was still resolved to return to Bethlehem and build himself a house in the valley of the shepherds. He had mentioned his intention to the shepherds, saying that he would take Mary for a while to her mother, that she might recover from the hardships undergone in her late abode. He left all kinds of things with them. End of reading. All right, notes. Not too much today. First thing, it's easy to get lost in all this lineage stuff. And while I'm not that interested in lineage, I learn it just for the sake of learning it. And because I'm presenting this stuff, it seems necessary to. But as Anne was apparently married 3 times, her first husband is Joachim, with whom she had Mary Heli, and then she had the Blessed Virgin, and then she married a second time because Joachim died, and her second husband, Eliud, is the one she was married to at the time of Christ's birth. She had a daughter with Eliud, who is also called Mary. They love recycling names here. And then she had a son with her third husband, who is unnamed. Now, she had Mary Heli at, we'll say 19 or 20, because she returned from the temple at 17. Anne had also gone to the temple from the ages of 5 to 17. Now, she would have had Mary then at about 40 years old. Then she would have had the third Mary, the child of 6 to 8 years old, mentioned in the text, that came with her to the crib cave, at about 46 to 48 years old. And then her later son, even older than that, perhaps 50. So Anne might have been 50 when her son was born. So Anne had 2 sisters herself. One of them was a much older sister named Sobe, and the younger one, mentioned here but not by name, was named Maraha. Now, Sobe begot some Eliud, but it's not the same as Anne's husband, Eliud. So, anyways, Maraha is the sister that Anne was visiting when she when she had visited near Bethlehem, because Maraha had married into the Benjamin tribe. And before it said she had two sons who were the disciples of the outer circle. Now, remember that Jesus had an inner and an outer circle of disciples. His inner circle was the 12, his outer was the 70 or the 72. Now, those two sons that Anne's sister Maraha had were named Aristaria and Kochara, which to me sound like female names, but no. Try to keep up, boys, girls. This is what you get when you have a life expectancy of like 20. Anyways, I don't know. Next note, I don't know the mystery of why Anne had to marry 3 times and have 3 daughters named Mary. This one eludes me. But Anne's mother had also 3 daughters, and the first daughter was also much older than the second. Sobe and Mary Heli have that in common. They're much older than their younger siblings. Now, Anne was the second daughter, as Mary was the second daughter of Anne. Or Mary, yeah, the Blessed Virgin Mary was the second daughter of Anne. Mary, oh yeah, anyways, I don't know what the mystery is. That's all I got. Maybe there's not sufficient information revealed. I don't know. Maybe there was a prophecy around this. I don't know. Next, note, Mary takes the child Jesus to adoration. Notice this. She takes the child to the cave by herself just to worship, just to adore. Lays him on the carpet and adores. Now, we do the adoration of the monstrance and the Eucharist, well, the Eucharist inside the monstrance, in the Catholic Church. The Church usually displays it. I don't know, some of them would at a daily basis, but some of them probably can only do so at certain times of the week. Mary does the same, and they would do it in their sacristy, I don't know, in their chapel. I don't know how it works at every church, though. Mary does the same with the child Jesus. I guess she didn't need the monstrance, because the light was illuminated when she did this. And she's allowed to lay hold of this Eucharist. Of course, she's conceived without sin, so. And the splendor was the light provided. Now, adoration is extremely important, kind of like sunlight. Now, as I said that, the sun just blared through my window. It must be a primer. Sunlight is extremely important for a person's health. Now, I learned this actually during the hysteria, that when you have sunlight, and I learned this firsthand, by the way, because I had, my liver was going haywire a couple of years ago. It kept activated and giving me malaise in the middle of the night. And that's the feeling like you're going to be sick. I think I had my blood was getting toxic. I think maybe I don't know what happened. I think I had something like what they call a die-off, bacterial die-off in my intestines. So I felt like there was some toxicity in my blood and my liver kept activating to flush it out. Well, anyways, when I started, and this happened in winter, and notice how you always get colds and whatever in winter when you're not getting any sun. So I decided, all right, I don't know what's causing this, and it left me in a massive indigestive state for like 2 months. So I could barely eat, but I did this. And then when I exposed myself to sunlight on purpose, and it gave me, it seemed to have detoxified me. It seems like the sun disinfects you, and this is a true effect. It actually, when the rays hit your blood, I call it nuking the blood, but it turns some of your blood into hydrogen peroxide, something like that, and then it just has a natural disinfectant effect on your blood. Now, if you live deprived of sunlight, your health will just subtly fail you. And if you live deprived of the Eucharist, the health of your soul will also subtly fail you. And evil seems to be stronger against you when you deprive yourself of the Eucharist. Now, you often read into the lives of holy men and women that they have spent a lot of time in adoration, in solitude, doing these practices that Mary did here at the cave, just quietly worshiping her child Jesus, quietly adoring. This is why we recite the rosary on a routine basis. This is like sunlight for the soul. That's it. Ave Maria.